Hello, hello. Let me check in with The We Free Men, which I have listened to 52% of so far. It's not that long of a novel by Terry Pratchett, a story of Discworld versus a Discworld novel, because these are theoretically his children's novels. Though, actually, this being a reread, I would say these are some of my favorite of the of the Terry Pratchett novels. It's like I guess a lot of story of children's fiction. It's got one storyline, and I find that kind of makes the books a little less meandering than some of other Terry Pratchett's books are, which are perfectly delightful. But yeah, these ones I find them strangely more, and just the character that we follow, Tiffany Aching, a young girl whose grandmother, Nanny Aching, so as we learn, Sarah Aching, who is the witch of the Chalk, the area that she lives in, very kind of shepherd, herding, that kind of farmland kind of area of Discworld. Um, and she has a brother. Oh, Wellington? God, lost his name already. Who is an annoyance, and when he goes missing, she's like, it's kind of like, would be a lot quieter. She's got that dark voice in her. She's not just like the kind of the cliched good little girl. No, she is a witch in the making. She is Nanny Aking's, Sarah Aking's heir in that realm. She's the person who stands off in a party and looks and watches, and has got that little voice that can watch herself and kind of take a step back from herself and look and think about that and think about that, which is so valuable in a witch or in just a really amazing, um, perceptive person. Um, she gets spotted by a couple of entities. One of them is Miss Tick, who's another witch who, there's something happening. She knows that there's something happening in the area, but the area's got a witch, and they discover, well, it's not Nanny anymore. It is Tiffany, and Miss Tick kind of goes as impersonates as a teacher in the area. There's traveling teachers who are allowed to kind of set up thing, but have to be off by daylight because they end up stealing stuff. But they work for food, eggs, for turnip, stuff like that, and the kids, the area can get sent by their parents to learn stuff, learn the odd thing. And Mystic is like, well, you're obviously, it's like, and Tiffany actually spots her. It's like, you're a witch, aren't you? It's like, what makes you think of that? Well, it's your hat. It's like, well, my hat's a flower hat. It's not a pointy hat. Yeah, that's something that a witch would definitely not wear, a pointy hat. So that probably means you're a witch. And it's like, oh, and it's because the Baron has outlawed witches in the area. And indeed, one of Tiffany's kind of great shames is that they they drove an old woman, an innocent old woman, out of her home because she was squinty and smelled and was alone and talked to herself. And they blamed her for the Baron's son going missing. And Yeah, they drove her out, drove her into the woods, and during the winter time she starved to death and died. And it's like, oh, God, and Tiffany feels guilt for not having kind of stuck up for it. I mean, she is a girl who is like 10 or 12. So it's kind of, there's that. She's also carrying around kind of the grief, kind of sorrow of not really having made a connection with Nanny, or just basically not being able to talk with her. They were only just silent, and Nanny was someone who seemed to be very taciturn. She had her two dogs, which she was the dog trainer of the area, and her dogs were the greatest. And she has these memories of Nanny letting her use the dogs to herd, and she's like, so so get away to me, and was saying all these things, and they just leapt and done it. Of course, now she looks back and goes, yeah, they didn't matter what I said, they would have just immediately done it because they were so well, and they were basically her. A witch has a familiar, that they're definitely familiars. Miss Tick has a toad, talking toad, which when Miss Tick goes off to get help, the toad stays behind. And they do need help because her little brother goes missing, and it turns out that the queen of fairyland, has taken her, and she needs to get help. Luckily, she's also come across these red-haired, 6-inch tall, tartan-wearing, Scottish Gaelic spouting menaces who are super strong, super fast, the Macnacfeagles, who she can see, and it's taken as one of her great, one of her things is like she can see them. They did her chore. They did her chores for her, and it's like, oh, okay. And we've gotten to the point in the story where she's been taken to their kelder, a very elderly woman who is about to die, and she says, okay, I'll help you. I'll give you advice on like how to get into fairyland to get to get your brother. Which the queen will just do whatever he wants. Will hold him forever. He'll never want. He'll always get sweets, but he'll be held, and he'll be held like that in fairyland forever and ever. But she says like, okay, I'll help, but you have to become the Kelder because I'm about to die. You have to become the Kelder after me. There isn't, until another female Macnacfeagle, which is they're very rare. There's hundreds and hundreds of. She's given birth to hundreds and hundreds of Macnacfeagle males, and only one female. But the female can't stay. The female has to go off and find her own kind of tribe to marry, because you can't marry your brothers, is the thing. And so you'll be the temporary one here. And in exchange, I will tell you how. And it's like, she's like, you basically have to go where the time isn't right, and it'll shine out at you. And it's like, well, that's not great, but it's like, well, that's what you need to look for. She doesn't know precisely where it is. So she avoids having to marry one of the Macnacfeagle warriors, and give birth to tons of children, which is rather awkward with giving her size and her being only like 11 or 12 years old, by saying, okay, I will marry you. Let's set a date. And the date is, there's this mountain, and a little bird flies there and rubs its beak on it. And once that bird has rubbed that mountain down to nothing, then I will marry you. And that is a real relief to Rob Anything, who is the head warrior, who said she'd agree to marry, because that means, yeah, I think everyone will be safely dead and gone in dust before that will happen. So it safely puts that off to one side. No one's feelings are hurt. Nobody wants to actually get married anyways. So it's a good workaround. It's a good thing of their thing. There's the aviator Feagle, who has trained buzzards to carry it, and someone says like, well, how don't the birds? I mean, how do the birds feel about this? It's like, oh, the birds and the animals, they all want to be friends with the Macnacfeagles. And it's like, they do? Well, let's just say they don't want to not be friends with the Macnacfeagles. That wouldn't be very good for them, aye, lassie. So it's like, okay, so it's that kind of humor. Yeah, it's really good. It's peak, I think, Terry Pratchett in 2003, and it goes on for 5 books. There's 5 books in this Tiffany Aching, so you definitely found a lot of stuff worth saying in these books, which I have to agree with. I really like Tiffany Aching as someone who goes from being a young girl in this book to kind of a woman, becomes a woman by the end of the books. It's a really good series. Yeah, yeah. It's kind of striking that this old white guy, old guy wrote these books with such a good character in Tiffany Aching. All right, I will leave it there. More videos later.